Hey guys, it's Sagar, and in this video, I'm going to compare the cameras on this Nothing Phone 2a with the ones on the iPhone 15. I know some of you are mad at me for even making this comparison and might have clicked on the video just to take it out in the comments. First of all, welcome to the channel, and secondly, I think you guys should still watch the video before lashing out in the comments. Let me make this very clear. None of these two phones compete directly or even indirectly with each other, and there is a huge price difference between the two. In fact, you can buy 3 Nothing Phone 2as at the price of one iPhone 15. So someone who was going to get the iPhone 15 is not going to look at this video and suddenly decide to go for the phone 2a, or someone who was planning on getting the phone 2a is not going to look at this video and increase their budget threefold and get the iPhone 15. There are a lot of reasons why there is such a huge price gap between both these phones. But the point of this video is to find out how far the cameras on budget smartphones have come and to show you guys that you don't have to spend huge amounts of money just to get good images with your smartphone. I'm also sure many people like to know how the cameras on their phones perform compared to the latest iPhones, so if you have the Nothing Phone 2a or if you are planning on getting it, this video is definitely for you. Just keep in mind that because the iPhone 15 costs a lot more, Apple was able to pack in better camera hardware and more advanced image processing algorithms on it, so its images are definitely going to be better in most scenarios. But we are trying to see if it will be 3 times as good. Let's find out. To keep this video from getting too long, instead of telling you all the camera specs, I will leave them on this slide. You can pause the video and go through them if you want. So without any further ado, let us start by checking out the images which I took during the daytime. At a first glance, when you look at these images individually, both look good. When you start paying attention and compare the two, you will notice few obvious differences between them. I think now is the good time to remind you guys to watch this video on the biggest display that you have got or in the highest resolution which your device supports, so you can make out all of the small differences which I am going to mention throughout the video. From this far, both the shots seem to have same amount of details, but if you look closer, you will see that Nothing Phone 2a's images don't have nearly as many details as the ones from the iPhone 15. You can zoom in on any part of these shots and you will find the iPhone's image to be a lot more detailed. The phone 2a has a 50 megapixel sensor and the iPhone 15 has a 48 megapixel sensor behind the main camera. But by default, 2a captures 12 megapixel bin shots and the iPhone captures 24 megapixel ones. So it's not a coincidence that iPhone's shots are more detailed. They actually have 24 megapixel worth of details in them. But I still feel that shots from the 2a should have had a lot more details. Even if we don't compare them with the images from the iPhone and look at them individually, you can surely see that the details you might be expecting to get out of a 50 megapixel sensor are just missing in these shots. If you don't zoom in, some of these shots from the Nothing Phone 2a seem even a bit sharper than the ones from the iPhone 15. But again, as you zoom in, the shots from the phone 2a just seem to have added artificial sharpening to make it look more detailed. These things of course only matter if you zoom in on any of your shots. If not, for most people, shots from the phone 2a look almost as good as the ones from the iPhone 15. It does have one issue though. The phone 2a is trying to overexpose the shot no matter which lighting conditions you are shooting in. This is especially worse if you are shooting in bright sunlight. As you can probably tell, the phone 2a completely blew up the highlights while the iPhone 15 managed to evenly expose the entire shot. To take care of this, you will have to make sure to tap on the brightest part of the viewfinder on the phone 2a and bring the brightness slider down manually. Now 2a tries to overexpose the outdoor shot, but in these indoor conditions where it should have brought up the brightness slightly, it ended up underexposing the shot. So like I mentioned in the 2a's detailed camera review, this phone's camera is inconsistent to put it simply. Now coming to the colors. The iPhone 15 captures true to life colors, which means the colors in its images look exactly how I could see the scene with my own eyes. But the Nothing Phone 2a tries to saturate the colors. The red door in this image was not as bright as it appears in the 2a's image. And in this shot, the flowers were saturated and bright, but while trying to lift the shadows, the phone 2a again made the shot too bright, taking away all the colors and contrast from it. I really wish Nothing is working on fixing this. For some reason, the phone 2a is not able to get the green color right. While it captures the colors, it also adds a lot of red to it, making the color in the image look completely different than how the shade of the green actually was. This happened with more than one shot, so I know this inconsistency is a recurring issue. Again, I really hope Nothing knows about it and is working on fixing this. In other cases, the colors that this phone 2a captures look good. Its images in almost all of these shots are a lot warmer than how the scene was, and as I mentioned before, there is also more saturation in them. But looking at these two shots next to each other, I'm starting to feel like I like the colors from the phone 2a. Yes, the colors from the iPhone 15, although a bit dull in comparison, is how the scene looked in real life. But when I look at the images, at least at the ones which I took in these indoor artificially lit conditions, I think the phone 2a's images are looking more lively. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. All in all, when it comes to colors, if you prefer to capture true to life colors of the scene, the iPhone 15 is doing a clearly better job. But if you like to have a bit punchier looking colors or slightly brighter looking shots, you might lean towards the images from the Nothing Phone 2a. In the end, color is a personal choice, so images from which of these two phones you like based on its colors will depend on your personal preference. Since the phone 2a has a tendency to bring up the shadows more in its shots, we see a lot less contrast in most of its images. In other words, its images start looking a bit flat, while at the same time you can see that there is a lot of depth in the shots on the iPhone 15. It doesn't bring up the shadows too much, so the contrast which we see naturally with our own eyes is preserved in the images. Now when we compare these two images side by side, I know for a fact that most people will prefer the image which is brighter. So for this reason, a lot of smartphone manufacturers try to make the images appear brighter like nothing is trying to do here. But while doing so, a lot of times they take away the details and contrast from the shot, making it look flat and lifeless. Both the companies have done a good job with the HDR algorithm on their phones. Dynamic range on the iPhone was really bad up until last year, but now you can see how well it manages to keep the sky from blowing up, while at the same time it brought up a lot of details from the shadows. Even in this shot, we can see that the iPhone has captured brighter shot with more details in the structure and preserved the blue sky at the same time. While the phone 2a for some reason made the shot look washed out like I captured it during overcast conditions, which was not the case. As said, both the companies have done a good job with the HDR algorithm because as you can see in this next shot, the phone 2a has also captured an amazing dynamic range. As you can see, it brought back much more information from the shadows compared to the iPhone 15. Similarly in this shot, it preserved the blue color of the sky and at the same time brought back a ton of details on the shadows, making its shot look very pleasing. It did again try to increase the saturation by a lot, but I think in this particular case, that worked in its favor and its HDR shot is looking better than the one from the iPhone 15. That being said, the phone 2a just can't sustain the good performance for a long time. Every now and then, it takes good shots and for the very next one, it might mess up the dynamic range like it did here. It again tried to brighten up the overall shot and in that process, it blew up the bright sun and took away all of the contrast and colors from the image. I feel like it is a good camera phone, but it is held back due to the inconsistent results. Whenever you are clicking an image with the phone 2a, you can never know how the shot is going to turn out. Everything might work out great, or it might mess up the colors, white balance or the dynamic range of the shot. So I think it is safe to say that inconsistency is the only constant thing about this camera. And I don't think it can get a lot better from this point because we have already received a number of updates on this phone and the inconsistent behavior is still present. For taking close-up shots, I am loving the phone 2a. Despite of having a large image sensor and a wide aperture, it lets me get a lot closer to the subject and set the focus accurately. It is not the fastest at setting the focus, and I think this point was highlighted even more as I was shooting with it and the iPhone 15 back to back. But when the resulting close-up shots look almost as good as the ones from the iPhone 15, I am not going to complain a lot about the focusing speed. The subject that we want to be in focus is that sharp from both the phones, and the background gets a very nice and creamy bokeh. These are normal close-up shots and not captured in portrait mode, so the blur to the background is natural optical blur thanks to the wide aperture and huge image sensor behind the main camera on both the phones. Once in a while, the phone 2a just doesn't want to set the focus on a particular subject. I took this shot a few times but it just failed to set the focus. Thankfully, this only happened once or twice, so I'm not going to consider this a big issue. What is a big issue is lifting up the shadows too much. This is not a new thing on the phone 2a, but I feel like it hurts the close-up shots the most because this way, all of the contrast of the shot is taken away, making the shot look very flat. At the same time, you can see the amazing depth in the close-up shots on the iPhone 15. Thanks to the good contrast, you can literally feel that the elements in its shots are one behind the other, while they all seem to be together and appear to be in the same plane in some of the close-up shots on the Nothing Phone 2a. With that, let us check out the images from the ultra-wide cameras on both these phones. While these are 12 megapixel shots on both the phones, phone 2a has a 50 megapixel sensor behind this lens, so theoretically, its images should have more details in them. From this far, both the shots seem to have similar amount of details, but if we zoom in 3 to 4 times, we do see slightly more details in the wider shots on the Nothing Phone 2a. So in terms of details in the ultra-wide angle shots, Nothing Phone 2a is beating the iPhone 15 fair and square. That being said, I don't know how many of you noticed it, but colors in the ultra-wide angle shots on the phone 2a are a lot warmer and even more saturated. Not just when compared against the ones from the iPhone 15, but here is the shot from the main and the wide camera of the Nothing Phone 2a. You can clearly see how much more saturation and warmth does the wide lens add to its shot. Wide lens on the iPhone 15 is again capturing the colors as they appear, and there is no difference in the white balance and color temperature between the normal and the ultra-wide angle shot. I've seen a lot of phones shift its colors and white balance while getting from the main to the ultra-wide camera, especially in the budget smartphone category, but the difference in the images from the Nothing Phone 2a is the biggest that I have ever seen. This is not a slight hue which can easily be adjusted. These images need proper white balance and color adjustment, so it is not that easy to make the wide shots on the phone 2a look as good as the ones from its main camera. Considering all of this, although they have slightly less details, I will say the wide shots look better from the iPhone 15. Neither of these phones have a 2x telephoto lens on the back, but both will give you a 2x option in the viewfinder. This is just digital zoom, and since both have high resolution sensors, they say that this 2x digital zoom can be termed as 2x lossless zoom. We saw at the beginning that the iPhone takes more detailed images, and that remains true for these digitally zoomed in shots as well. You can see that as I zoom in further on these images, iPhone's images have so much more information in them, while the one from the 2A just seems to look like a watercolor painting after a while. I'm sure this isn't coming as a surprise for anyone, but I believe nothing could have tweaked the image processing on this phone a bit better. After all, there is a 50 megapixel sensor behind the main camera, so there are a lot of details with the shots. Nothing just doesn't seem to be doing enough with the captured information. If you want to zoom in on a particular part of the image later on, or if you want to capture more details, nothing hopes that you will take these shots in the 50 megapixel mode. This time, the iPhone 15 also gets to capture 48 megapixel shots, and when we compare these shots side by side, it is a surprise that we again see the iPhone's images being a lot sharper. And the difference is not small. There is a huge difference in the amount of details being captured by both the phones in the high resolution mode. The phone 2A has a high resolution sensor of the two, and its images are at least 1 MB larger than the ones from the iPhone 15, but we are not seeing any of those details in its images. It feels like I am still comparing the 48 megapixel shot from the iPhone 15 with the 12 megapixel one from the phone 2A, but that is not the case. I was very careful while taking these images, and I double checked the size and resolution of the images from the phone 2A just to make sure that these are in fact 50 megapixel images. This is a classic example of where high resolution doesn't necessarily mean better images. What matters more is the quality of the pixels and how your smartphone is processing the images. I also compared the 12 and 50 megapixel shots from the phone 2A in its detailed camera review and found that the 50 megapixel shots barely had any more details than the 12 megapixel ones. So if you plan on shooting 50 megapixel shots with the phone 2A, don't. It is better if you stick to the default 12 megapixel mode, as the 50 megapixel images will just end up eating a lot of storage space with no noticeable difference in the image quality even when you zoom in 5 to 6 times. iPhone 15's 48 megapixel shots on the other hand capture a clean image with huge amount of details. Now we come to the portrait shots. No matter which phone you are using, this is the easiest way to make your images stand out. The edge detection on the phone 2A has got a lot better with software updates. Honestly, it was really horrible when I first got the phone, and even now I am taking these portrait shots with the aperture or f-stop number set to f5.6 on the phone 2A. This way, the edge detection is a bit forgiving. This phone's tendency to overexpose the shot sometimes makes the portrait shots completely messed up. It also tries to brighten up the face and mess up the skin tones, so you will have to be very careful while taking portrait shots with this phone 2A. iPhone 15 on the other hand is still a delight in this mode, and its portrait shots look amazing. These are still not perfect, but next to the ones from the phone 2A, they definitely seem to be perfect. If you want to take good portrait shots with nothing, you will have to tap on the face of the subject and bring the brightness slider down manually. This way, it won't blow up your subject's skin tones. While the edge detection got better with updates, I wish nothing would have also worked on getting the issue of overexposure under check. I also feel like the subject's face could have been a bit sharper. iPhone on the other hand is handling all of these situations like a champ. It is detecting the edges and capturing the skin tones accurately, and it doesn't let any part of the shot blow out, so the HDR on this phone is working like magic as well. I believe portrait mode is one of those modes which can get better with software updates, so there is still hope for the phone 2A to get better at this, but at the same time I won't be counting too much on it. I feel like the phone 2A is much happier while capturing portraits of objects. The edge detection got a bit better while doing this with software updates, and I feel it also captures mostly accurate colors while capturing portraits of objects. It still struggles a bit with transparent bottles and glasses, whereas the iPhone 15 does an amazing job with these objects. I would still say that I feel the phone 2A is the most comfortable while capturing these and the close-up shots. You might not see the most accurate edge detection in the viewfinder while you are clicking the shot, but the results after it is done processing, which by the way takes much longer than the normal shots, looks really good for the most part. It might miss the focus sometimes, but as I said while capturing the close-up shots, this did not happen too often, so again I won't be worrying too much about it. iPhone's portrait shot both of people and objects seem to be on a whole new level. They seem very natural, and it detects the edges perfectly even if you have the f-stop number set to something like f2.8. On the phone 2A, I had to set the f-stop number between f4.0 and 5.6 for all of these shots. With that, we come to the images which are taken indoors and artificial lighting conditions. I have made a fair share of these comparison videos, and this is the point where the cameras on a low-budget smartphone start falling way behind the ones on the iPhone. But this Nothing Phone 2A has actually surprised me with its performance after the light goes down. Thanks to the bigger image sensor, wide aperture, OIS and its tendency to capture brighter shots, I feel like its images are giving a tough competition to the iPhone 15 in these lighting conditions. If I zoom in, its images quickly start falling apart and they don't have nearly as many details as the ones from the iPhone 15. But if I don't zoom in, which one of these two shots would you prefer? Honestly, even I would pick the one from the Nothing Phone 2A. It doesn't only look brighter, but it also makes the colors pop out. iPhone, while capturing the exact color of how the scene looked in real life, is making the scene look a bit dull in comparison. Well, all of that stops being true when we look at this next shot. You can see that one from the iPhone is so much sharper and has more details, and it's also the brighter one. We see something similar in the next set of images as well. So what is going on? Well, it's the inconsistency on the phone 2A which strikes again. In most of the other cases, the phone 2A captures much brighter looking shots than the iPhone 15. Again, the shots are just brighter. They basically have very little detail and lot of noise. Actually, the noise is not that much, but it feels much higher when we compare against the much cleaner shots on the iPhone 15. Both the phones get night mode, and I let both of them decide when they want to bring it on. Phone 2A switches to the night mode for almost all of its shots after the sun has set, whereas the iPhone doesn't switch to it until the light is very low. And I think that helps it capture much sharper looking images in lower light, as the shots without the night mode don't take all that long to capture, while the one with it turned on can take over 2 seconds to capture the most amount of details. This also increases the chance of the resulting images being blurry. Of course, the OIS on the main camera does help a bit with this, but even it doesn't guarantee a perfectly sharp image in lower light. So yes, iPhone's images are much sharper and more detailed, and they also capture very little noise even in lower light. But I'm sure many people are going to look at the brighter shots on the phone 2A and consider it to be a better low light shooter. If you have even slightly deeper understanding about photography, you will know that that is not the case. Since images from the iPhone 15 are much cleaner, if you want to, you can edit them and make them look just as bright and punchy as the ones from the phone 2A without too much noise being added to the shot. When it comes to taking wide shots in lower light, here are the results. Again, the phone 2A captured a much brighter and this time even cleaner looking shot, but in this particular case, the iPhone did not fire the night mode. When the night mode is actually fired on both the phones, iPhone's images look just as bright as the ones from the phone 2A, and this time they also have more details and less noise in them. I for one don't switch to this lens very often when the light goes down, but if you want to switch to it, you should know that when you hold them steady, both end up taking decent wide lens night mode shots. That brings us to the front facing cameras. Phone 2A gets a 32 megapixel sensor behind its front camera, whereas the iPhone 15 gets a 12 megapixel one. Just plain maths tells us that 32 is bigger than 12, so any normal person would expect a 32 megapixel selfie camera on the phone 2A to capture more details, but I don't see that in these images. Even as I zoom in, I see the selfies from the iPhone 15 having much more details in them. Nothing also seems to be applying some sort of skin smoothing to its images, which I am not a big fan of. The selfies are not bad if you look at them alone, but they don't capture the actual colors of the scene, make the face appear smoother and also brighter. Come to think of it, I think the last two things might be something that people actually prefer, at least here in India. The portrait selfies from the phone 2A still don't show accurate colors of the skin, and it also adds a bit of green hue to some of the images. But the edge detection around the subject is pretty decent. It does however manage to keep multiple faces in focus, as opposed to the iPhone which has always just kept the person closest to the camera in focus whenever you are taking portrait selfies. Here's a video from the front facing camera of the Nothing Phone 2A and the iPhone 15. You can see how both these phones are handling the overall colors of the scene, exposure and stabilization when I'm walking around with them. Nothing Phone 2A can shoot these videos at a maximum resolution of 1080p 60fps, while the iPhone 15 can shoot these videos at 4K 60fps. Now I have both my arms completely extended, but the frame on the Nothing Phone 2A is still pretty cropped in, so this is something you might want to keep in mind if you are planning on shooting selfie videos with the Nothing Phone 2A. Here is a 4K 30fps video sample from both the phones. Nothing gets the support of OIS and EIS at this resolution as well, thanks to which its videos look really stable. There is still a slight wobble or jello-like effect on the edges of the frame with each of my step, but given the price of this phone and the state of the videos from competing smartphones, I think I can definitely give this a pass. It misses a few frames while shooting at this resolution, which might be a bit of worry if you're planning to shoot a lot of videos with it. But for casual videos, I think this phone does a very good job. Sometimes it also makes the colors appear too pale and might take away all the contrast from the video, but this happens only when you're shooting in very bright light, but when shooting indoors or in most of the other conditions, it does well. iPhone's videos are on a whole another level. They look extremely pleasant, the movement is smooth, and the stabilization is one of the best that you can get in any smartphone. I'm sure you must have heard this a lot, that iPhone is the best when it comes to shooting videos, and I'm going to tell you that this is definitely true. If you plan on shooting a lot of videos with your phone or maybe vlog with it, there is no other phone in the market which comes even close to the iPhone's performance. So with that, we have seen close to 180 image and video samples from both these phones combined, and while the iPhone 15 is comfortably ahead of the phone 2A in almost all lighting conditions, I honestly think its images are not 3 times as good. Cameras on the Nothing Phone 2A are good and it does an amazing job of getting very close to the iPhone's images, but what is holding it back is the inconsistency. When shooting with it, you can never know how the next shot is going to turn out, and that makes it a very unreliable camera, not just in comparison to the iPhone 15, but in general. There's also another way to look at it. Some people might think, so what if it's inconsistent? It takes really good images when it works properly and it costs way less than the iPhone 15. Which of these two school of thoughts do you fall under? Let me know in the comments. iPhone 15 on the other hand has an amazing set of cameras and it is one of the most consistent cameras that you could buy right now. So in a way, when you're choosing to go with an iPhone, amongst other things, you are also paying a premium to get a consistent performance out of it. As I said at the beginning, someone who was going to get the iPhone 15 is still going to go for it, and someone going for the Nothing Phone 2a is not going to increase their budget 3 times and get the iPhone 15. But if you are going for the Phone 2a, now you know where your phone's camera stands in comparison to the latest iPhones. These have been my thoughts about the cameras on both these phones. But you guys saw the images too, so what do you guys think about these cameras? Please let me know in the comments. That is it for this video, guys. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe to the channel for a lot more quality tech videos like this. You can also check out some of the other videos from this channel. This has been Sagar, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.